Good morning. Today we're going to be looking at Leviticus chapter 18, one of the less thrilling chapters in the Bible, but one that is incredibly important. I'm not going to read the whole chapter, so feel free to take a look at that yourself, either right now or at a later date. But I'm going to read just a couple verses. None of you, this is verse 6, shall approach anyone near of kin to uncover nakedness. I am the Lord. You shall not uncover the nakedness of your father, which is the nakedness of your mother. She is your mother, you shall not uncover her nakedness. Now, skipping a few verses, and those next ones are very similar iterations of that, we go to verse 21. You shall not give any of your offspring to sacrifice them to Molech, and so profane the name of your God. I am the Lord. You shall not lie with a male as with a woman, it is an abomination. The word of God for the people of God. Can you say with me, thanks be to God. Now, this whole chapter is about primarily sexual relations, and primarily about unacceptable sexual relations, according to what Moses heard from God and spoke to the people. I focused in on 21 and 22 because 22, of course, is a pretty condemning verse that really needs a lot of interpretation, and because 21 is just a weird interjection that seems to have nothing to do with appropriate sexual relations. We're going to be using Rabbi Danya Ruttenberg's work to help us a little bit in interpretation here. So there's a couple options for what this could mean, what this ban on a male lying with a male as with a woman. First option is that because of this pairing right after verse 21 on the ban on sacrificing children to a Canaanite god, is that this verse is really about idol worship, which, as we all know, is a big no-no for God. God does not like idol worship. The fact that there's an interjection of this child sacrifice practice in the middle of sexual relations, followed by the ban on seemingly male-male sexual relations, makes us think that perhaps there's a reason for that. It could have been, many folks think that there was practices in the temple of sexual relations with temple sex workers, or with using sexual relations as a form of worship in the temple. So that is, enough to kind of push that verse to the side, potentially. Another option is that through the millennia of interpretation and translation and writing and rewriting, we lost some words, and that this ban is actually on male-male incestual sexual relationships. A bulk of the chapter 18 is about incestual relationships, sexual relationships. And that could be what this ban is speaking to. Now that's kind of just the tip of the iceberg, and if there's more you want to get into with that, we can do that at another time. But what I really want to focus on today is what this whole chapter means. What I think that it means is that God cares deeply about our sexual relationships. In the midst of all of these ritual obligations and laws for interacting with one another, God spends a full chapter on sexual relations, specifically on inappropriate sexual relations. I think this means that God thinks sexual relations are very, very important. Not only are they important for God's people, but it is important that they are done right. It's important that they are done in a way which respects both people, in a way which is safe, which is with care for one another, and care for the community. I think this shows that God not only wants us to have appropriate sexual relations, but that God is willing to take the time to explain what is completely unacceptable. What I think you can take from Leviticus chapter 18 is that sexual relations are something that are intimately a part of our faith. They're something that God cares about, and they're not anything to be ashamed of. as long as we are keeping in mind care for one another and loving one another.